episode number 2 of Wandering Middle Eastern Teacher. I'm Abu Laith, and today we have Mrs. Christina Childress with us. First,
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So she's going to bring some experience on teaching English. So we'll get right into it. First, why did you become a teacher?
So I kind of became a teacher by mistake, I would say. I said I would never be a teacher, which is funny to think about now, but my parents were both teachers, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I was going to be a writer, and that meant starving to death, probably. So I got a job in college just teaching math, like after school, remediate math, to middle school kids, mostly boys. And I decided that I actually really loved it, so I might be crazy. And so I said, okay, I'll just do that, and went to a college for a teacher prep program. And that is the only job I've had for, this is 19 years now. So I think when you know, you know.
Yeah, cool. So what has your experience been? How long have you said 19 years teaching? What do you teach? What levels do you teach?
So I currently teach English to 8th graders. So they're like 14 years old. I have taught every single thing to 7th and 8th graders. So history, math, science, health, whatever it is, crochet, gardening, cooking, everything. But mostly I teach English, and so it's reading, writing, grammar, all the stuff kids love.
Yeah, it definitely takes a special person for that. So why that age group, 7th and 8th graders?
I don't know. I really like them. Most people don't. So I'm certified to teach anything 5th grade through 8th grade, any subject, anything. And then I'm certified to teach English 6th grade through 12th grade. But I don't know, for whatever reason, they're kind of fun, definitely challenging, a little independent, some days needy. It's kind of like having a toddler, but much, much bigger. I don't know, I like it. And someone told me once, you know, if you're meant to teach middle school, you'll know it. And everyone I ever talk to gives me like this sad face, like, oh, I'm sorry. But I personally couldn't do the little tiny ones. I have one, she's great. I don't want 20 of them. I don't know, they're fun, but to me and I read this book one time in college, called The Last Best Chance. And it was the adolescent education class, and basically how like that adolescent middle school age is your last best chance. There's so many factors that lead into a person's development, and that's kind of their last chance before their path is formed. And I like being able to see them when they're older and they come back, and they always get better. Even if they're great, they always get better as they get older, and it's just kind of fun. I don't think it would be as fun if they were already 18 or 19 years old. They're not going to change that much.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deal with loose teeth. Ever. So I can't go below. No going below middle school.
Nice. Okay. Good answer. Yeah, I'm definitely glad there are people like you who really feel your calling is to middle school.
A lot.
So the next question is, classroom management is huge, so important for teachers. It's not really something they cover a lot in teacher preparation programs. It's more winging it as you get there. So, what does classroom management look like in your class? How do you cope with students, maybe difficult, or others view them as challenging?
Sure. Well, so I will say that I think my classroom management preparation 20 years ago was like a book someone handed me. It's a sweet little book, whatever, but it's not accurate. There's kind of phases in education where people will push different philosophies of classroom management, and at that time it was Harry Wong, and it was the first days of school, and I still have it. It's like a weirdly long book.
Yeah, it is.
Harry Wong, First Days of School, basically said you got to start out firm. I believe it was implied. Sorry. Don't smile for the first 2 weeks. Like, be stern, be firm, have everything set up, have very strict rules, and you're kind of training kids how to act. And that swung a whole different direction a few years later, where there's this thing that was published called the New Teacher Toolkit. I even went to a conference about it. And in the New Teacher Toolkit, you got like a stop sign that said quiet, and on the other side it said talk quietly. It was like, it was very gimmicky, and we, even as a second year teacher, I thought, please, I'm gonna hold up that little sign and they're gonna rip it out of my hands. So I don't really know how it started, but I will say that the first year I taught, I'm pretty sure I cried every day until about February. So a good 6 months.
In class or
No.
after?
Always immediately after class. Just, I don't know what to do, nothing is working, and I would try new things, like, okay, from now on, this is what we're gonna do. And it was very Harry Wong. Like, I would come in on a Monday, all right, kids, this is how we're gonna do this now. All right, forget last week, this is how we're gonna do it. And we always had to kind of start from scratch. And I know, bless them, I know they were probably like, okay, whatever. This lady, I was 21 years old, she has no idea what she's doing. And it wasn't until about February of that year that I just decided I'm just gonna do things how I would want people to do them for me. I would want to have a little bit of say, and not, I don't believe in like kids make the rules type junk, but we're all a community together, and we're all together all the time. And there just needed to be an agreement about how we talk to each other, or when is it appropriate to expect work, and when is it appropriate to move around or joke around or anything. And we kind of had to come to a little consensus as a class. Now, I had 6 classes, so I do this like 6 different times, but it's amazing how kids will pretty much say the same thing. So I did not have 6 different sets of rules. They pretty much all agreed, but they had a stake in doing it. And that saved my career because I didn't quit. So for several years after that, my classroom management strategy was to put the kids in little teams, and they would come up with like a team name, and they got points. They would do like a little point thing. If everyone in their group was ready for class, they got like 10 points. If everybody, whatever it was. We had these point trackers on the wall, and it was very intricate, and I did it for years. And it was sweet, and we would move groups every 6 weeks or something. It worked for me, and it worked for other people. I now do not believe that, and I think if that's where people have to start, it's a good start. But the older you go, the less that's going to work. So when I taught 7th grade, the first part of the year, I mean, I had those kids trained like dogs. monkeys, whatever animal you can imagine. And everybody was amazed. And I mean, because they were getting something. There was an extrinsic benefit to whatever they were doing.
Right.
If everyone put their name on the paper, their team got points. Like, and 7th graders care. And then I got this class of 8th graders. And I was like the classroom management queen, and they would give me all the hard ones. And I was like, I got this. And it did not work. It did not work at all. They didn't care. They were like, points for what? And I was like, well, just points. For what? So then you have to offer kind of higher benefits and higher incentives. And before you know it, you're basically running like a pyramid scheme for classroom management. And that's when I started having to do actual research and said, this isn't going to work anymore. So for the lower level kids, and I think for younger kids, something tangible and extrinsic is good. The higher up or the older you get, the less they're going to care. So the one thing that I found that is pretty much how I would run my class, whether I was teaching 1st grade or whether I was teaching a graduate class, which I've done several times, middle school, is basically this, there's a difference between collaborative learning and cooperative learning. And cooperative is like the thing where everybody has a role. One person's the reporter, that kind of junk. And collaborative is where there's different problems to solve and each person contributes. And to me, that's also classroom management. So I read this book and went to the best professional development I've ever had in my life, by this company called Origins, and the book was called Developmental Designs. And they're the ones who created like the morning meeting and responsive classroom, which again is really good. But responsive classroom is kind of marketed for elementary. So developmental designs was more for middle school. And the thing that they researched and proved to me as someone who taught 12 or 13 years was that adolescence is just different. And like in your brain it's different, in your body it's different, lowered, everything is different. And so you have to do things a little bit differently. And there were four big tenets of it that basically if you could run your classroom and include these 4 things, it would always work. You would not have to worry about like if so-and-so had a bad weekend, whatever, because you're going to include 4 things. Ready? This is like life-changing. So adolescents, like 11 to 16, have to have every day a sense of autonomy, so a sense of control. I'm gonna forget what they were. Autonomy, fun, which is the part we leave out a little bit, but that's where you're gonna get like spitballs thrown, because they're gonna have fun whether you let them or not. So you might as well do something to let them have fun. Competency. So if a student doesn't feel competent with the material, then he tends to act out. Autonomy, fun, competency. Always forget the last one. It's just gonna happen. I can't remember right now. But basically, relationships. So in middle school, the only thing they're going to care about is relationships. And that doesn't mean with me. Like, oh, I love my teacher. Not necessarily. But they're going to have to interact in a relational way. And they're going to have a sense of competency. And a sense of control. And have fun. And I remember thinking, but how am I going to teach them to write? Like, if we spend all day doing all this social emotional learning stuff, when are they going to learn to write? And I will just tell you that when I started, I even had to kind of put it in my lesson plans at first to get it in my brain. Like, which part of this block are we doing something fun? And which part of this block am I going to let a kid show mastery for just a little thing? And which part are they going to actually interact with each other and try to build in all four things? Which part can I give them some choice, some control? I have never had anything that worked so well. We're talking like, when am I going to teach English? Anytime I want. Because I went from having a very, very solid classroom management experience, you're always going to have a few discipline problems, to like 0. None.
Wow.
And some days, and I have a special ed co-teacher, usually there's students with disabilities, students in advanced classes, all that, everybody. It's like when you accommodated their needs, you could teach as much as you want because you're not putting out fires all day. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And so I started doing it, and then we had people come in to like train teachers in our school. Like 3 days, like Saturdays, Thanksgiving break, train all the teachers, sit in a circle, talk about your feelings type stuff. But it was very organized and very well done, following those 4 guidelines. And as a school, we implemented it for like 2 years. Drastic discipline reduction. Drastic. So then I started doing my doctoral work, dissertation, and that was going to be, I didn't finish it. Because I got married, had a baby, and moved and have 40 animals, but I don't feel like I needed to. I felt like whether or not I get a piece of paper that shows this thing works, it works. Yeah. So, but the hard part is there's no gimmicky thing to sell. There's no like box to sell that's like, do these 3 things and it will all work. But the one thing I could say is, if you set up your classroom, virtual, anything, to me, you have to set it up anticipating every possible problem. And then almost, I tell new teachers, like, walk through what you want the kids to do. Do you want them to pick up a piece of paper when they come in the door? Where are they going to get it? Do they have to walk across the room to it? Because they're going to slap 6 kids walking across the room. So, like, where do you want them to do this? And I think it's really important to have a structure and efficient space. But if you're not accommodating their actual social, emotional needs, you're going to have a good couple days. And that's all it's going to be. But if you and I don't think Harry Wong is wrong. I think the first days of school are very important. I've not seen where telling kids what to do and this is how we're going to do it and being strong and firm, because I am strong and firm. No one has ever been unclear about that. But I don't want to be that all the time. And if you kind of have a collaborative relationship, you don't have to be the strongest, firmest person in the whole building.
Yeah. Wow, that's some really good insight. Definitely.
I wish it were like a simple thing.
Yeah.
But what it could be simple is literally making lesson plans. Where are you building in a game? 2 minutes. Like a game, not like a win-lose point thing, but something where they have to interact. Where are you building in something that everyone could show mastery, even if you barely speak English or you're high-level AP? Where are you building in something where they have a choice, and where are you building in something where they can interact? And if you had to make those 4 things happen every day, it will become more natural.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, good. I can remember I also read that First Days of School book in my teacher preparation class. And then I tried it. I was teaching in the Middle East, and the whole first day we practiced coming into the classroom, immediately sitting down and starting on the warm-up. We must have gone in and out of the class, and I was teaching high school, 15 times, and they thought it was hilarious that we're just standing there, and eventually I just gave up. It just absolutely was not working, and that kind of set the standard for the year. It was a tough year, but I really like those points, especially the relationship. Not necessarily with the teacher, but the kids are relational, and by ignoring it, it's only a matter of time before.
Well, and somebody told me once, they're going to do those 4 things whether you let them, whether you let them or not. They're going to have fun. They're going to be interacting. You're saving yourself a world of trouble if you orchestrate it for them so they do it appropriately. And the more they do it appropriately, the better they get at it. And I don't know, I hate anything that's like just theory. I'm like, that's cute. I've seen so many theories in 19 years of this. So many. But this one, I felt like I could see the results. And I'm saying within a day. Within a day, I could see it. I would go to a training, I'd come back in, I'd be like, let's just try this. Because if it doesn't work, I don't believe anything these people are saying. But it worked. And I remember one year, I remember looking at my co-teacher across the room one time, we're both like, what just happened? Like, okay. Then you try not to act surprised. Like, yeah, it's totally...
I knew that would happen.
It's totally reasonable that all these children are acting perfectly. And when someone doesn't, there were like ways to deal with that. Just who can remind me what we agreed upon? That was the big deal. Not our rules say, but who can remind us what we agreed when someone interrupts? Who can remind us what we said? And they would do it, and you haven't said a word. And I'm gonna miss that this year. We're mostly virtual this year, which I'm still gonna do it with the kids in my class all day, but I think I'm gonna miss that. And I also think that the virtual thing sadly might lull some teachers into not thinking classroom management. Because the content can be great, but if you go back to like full in person and don't know how to manage a group of people, basically next year could be really frustrating. This year they'll be fine because you can mute them on the Zoom thing. You can't mute teenagers in real life.
No, you can't. Okay, great. The last question I want to end on is reading is also something really important for teachers, and also one of those things that's a little ambiguous in how you actually do it. So what's kind of your approach to teaching English and especially reading? How do you teach kids to read or to engage with literature?
So I don't really teach them to read as much. There have been years I had to, like phonics and word families and stuff like that. And if that's what they needed, that's what we do. But when we say we're teaching them to read, we're more just teaching them to closely examine a text and to make inferences. And so we try to find, to me the key is finding literature with depth to it. So it's not just comprehension, like who did what, but really thinking of it as like a person and why, like people's motives. So the big deal for kids in our age group is finding evidence for what you think. And I always tell them, if you can find the evidence that you know you're right, there's no master key, there's no teacher book that's, if you read this and you have an opinion and you can support it, then you're right. So that's what I want them to do no matter what. I don't care what they're reading. I want them to be able to make a judgment and support it. Because they are at all different levels. It would not be appropriate necessarily for everyone to have the same text. And you don't want to have like the baby books or a text that's too hard, but giving them some choice in what they read, but still having the same skill is definitely more my approach. I think it's harder to teach reading than writing, and I don't know if too many people that feel that way. I think English teachers feel that way because reading is something that we're just so used to doing, and sometimes you think, well, why don't they get it? It says it right there. But it doesn't usually say it right there. There's usually hints, and good readers will put the hints together. So my approach has always been, yeah, okay, read this text, but also we do a lot of almost like mystery games, like almost like Clue. And you're trying to find out the answer. You're just finding answers. But like you're finding the answer, we call it like a scavenger hunt or something. And they're much more engaged if they think there's some hidden clue. Which there is, because it's just reading. That's the hidden clue, is like there's inferences. And it's fun to see, teenagers almost fight with each other about what the actual right answer is to something because they have different clues, and then they want to know, well, what's the right answer? And I'm like, you're both right. They hate that. But I definitely think having different levels of text, specifically maybe about the same theme or the same content, to me there's nothing wrong with that. That's an easy thing to do now with online sources. You can have tons of different resources that you can kind of sort by lexile level or sort by reading level, and they're all about the same thing, so the kids don't really notice. But you just like, I'm not going to give you like a 9th grade reading passage if you're on a 2nd grade level, because you're just going to get mad. But I don't want it to look different either. Appearances are very important. So I would encourage people more not to like read a novel or teach a book, but to ask a good question and give them different sources that are accessible. And when it comes to writing, to me, writing is 100%. You start where you are. And that doesn't matter if you're my niece who's 6 or a grad student. Everyone, me included, everyone has something they can improve on. And so I think writing's almost more naturally lending itself to that. And no one feels comfortable with it. So they're more
all in the same boat.
They're more likely to ask. I've never had anyone, an adult, come to me and say like, I'm a great writer. Most people are like, I can't do this. Can you help me? And all right. So it's almost like if no one's good at it, they're more likely to ask for help. But I think skill-based things have to be developmental and not just like teach the material, give a test, move on. Because that's how it gets that way.
It's hard to prevent that kind of plunge or descend, gradual slide into teaching, especially in this age of standards when they're testing pretty much the end of every course in the high school. It's a good reminder of the skills are what matters, and starting where people are.
Yes. No judgment. I always think of it like exercise or working out or something. Like, if people don't want to join the gym because everyone's there is very fit, then they're not going to go to the gym and only make it worse.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the same as writing. Like, you're not born with it. Everyone had to learn it, and we're all in different places, and it's more just like a gym. Like, and if you want to read better, you read more. If you want to run better, you run more. It's never all that pleasant when you're learning, but I don't know. I remember English classes in school, and I was very good at it. So I was essentially just bored out of my mind because we would sit there and we would read a book out loud and like go around the room and read The Hobbit for like 12 weeks, which I think I finished it after like 4 days. So all I did was like kind of count people and figure out where I would pick up. And I wasn't listening. I was just waiting my turn to read out loud, and then she'd move on. And I don't know what I learned during that experience, except that I hate The Hobbit. I hated The Hobbit. But who can read that book for 12 weeks? But I think if she just let me read something I wanted to read, I would have done anything she wanted and not just be sitting there. And I know some kids were sitting there doing the same thing, like, okay, I'm going to read the 4th paragraph, and they were just like reading that 4th paragraph 100 times to themselves so they didn't sound bad, but they had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And I just never want to do that. I want everybody engaged at his or her own level, which is a lot harder than just handing someone a book.
A lot harder, but ultimately, that's the point. That's the goal. And yeah, it kind of weaves together a lot of the themes that you've talked about. Even the classroom management, ultimately you could say, like, it's about engagement.
Yes.
The more students are engaged in the relationship and the fun and the showing mastery, like, the more they're with you and not another thing causing problems, destroying things.
I mean, some kids when they're bored will sleep. Middle school kids will not. That's not gonna happen. My parents taught high school for years, and my dad would say, like, yeah, he just sleeps. At least he's not causing problems. Like, I would yearn for that some days, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but I don't want you to sleep either, but I want you to be involved in a positive way. Like, use your gifts for good, not disruption. And I think if I had been a kid who was prone to disruption, I would have been like, I read this book 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I'm bored.
Yeah.
Let me do something else. But I was like very quiet. Would have never done anything wrong. So they're not all like that. That was probably my biggest surprise when I started teaching.
Yeah.
It was second only to the fact that I was like, today you get to write. Like, get to? Like, yeah, don't you love it? Don't you love writing? Don't you love the process of writing? Yeah, no one said that. But I loved it. So no one, I was shocked that they weren't just like eager to get out a journal and write all period. Because that would have been like heaven to me. But not everyone, apparently.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Christina Childress, for talking to us. A lot of advice that I think is going to be really useful for new teachers, for teachers who maybe got kind of thrown in there without a lot of explanation or preparation. So definitely, if you like some of the things that were referenced in this video, ask other people and look for those. I think it can really help. And stick around for the next episode of Wandering Middle Eastern Teacher. We'll keep drawing out experiences and advice from other people that hopefully make an impact and are helpful for you in your teaching career. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye.